Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session of Spokane Public Schools Keep Learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all of our third graders out there, and any child who is interested is always welcome to join us. My name is Arian Stumbaugh, and I'm an ELA coach at Longfellow Elementary in Spokane Public Schools, and I will be your teacher for this lesson. I am so glad you are participating with me today. You can still tune into this lesson even if you haven't seen any of the others. Today we are going to read A Tree is Growing by Arthur Doros, illustrated by S.D. Schindler. Did you notice that the book has an illustrator? Even though there are drawings in this book, it is still an informational text. When we read for information, it is always a good idea to set the purpose. Today, our focus is asking questions while we read. When you don't understand what you're reading, stop and ask yourself a question. There are different types of questions we can ask and answer while reading the text that can help us understand. I like to think of them as red, yellow, and green questions. These colors are in a familiar order, aren't they? Looks an awful lot like a stoplight. Keeping this in mind as a visual as we read will help us remember what each of the type of questions are that we're studying today. Let's look at our chart. Green. Well, when you're driving, that means to go. So when we're reading, we're going to go to the text and find the answer. Yellow. When you're driving, that means to slow down. And when you're reading, you need to slow down and look for the answer. You might have to read forward a little bit. You might have to reread a little bit to find exactly what the question is asking you. Red. When you're driving, that means stop. It's the same for when you read. You're going to need to use the information that you have read, plus what you already know, to find the answer. Here's our essential question today. What are some differences among types of trees? You should be able to answer that when we're done reading today. Are you ready to read? Me too. Let's go. A giant tree may look as if it has always been big, but even the biggest tree keeps growing and changing. In the spring, you can see that a tree is growing as you watch buds on the branches unfold into leaves. Bristlecone pines are the oldest known living trees on Earth. Some have been growing for 5,000 years, since before the pyramids in Egypt were built. Leaves can be skinny needles or big heart shapes. Whatever shape or size a leaf is, it makes food for the tree. A kind of sugar is made in the leaves. Trees use the sugar as food. The sugary water made in the leaves is mixed with other tree juices called sap. The food in the sap is carried throughout the tree. Where a branch breaks or bark is cut, sap oozes out of a tree. The strong smells of saps can keep insects from eating the trees they live on. If you rub a sassafras leaf, the sap smells spicy. Maple syrup is the boiled sap of sugar maple trees. Readers, the selection says sap is carried throughout the tree, but it doesn't say how. What makes liquid move inside a tree? That isn't answered right away. Let's keep reading and see if it is answered later in the text. A tree needs sunlight, air, soil, and water to grow. Water travels through passages in the trunk and branches up to the leaves. The water moves up the trunk as if it is being sucked through a straw. Sugary sap made in the leaves travels down other passages in the trunk, taking food to different parts of the tree. The roots of a tree grow into the ground and hold the tree in place. Roots are like pipelines. They absorb water and carry it into the tree. A tree's roots spread out far underground. They usually grow out a little farther than the tree's branches. Trees need minerals to grow. Minerals are tiny particles that are found in the soil. Salt is one kind of mineral. Like salt, other minerals dissolve in water. They are mixed in with the water that roots absorb and are carried throughout the tree. Mushrooms growing among the roots of a tree can help it get minerals. And the mushrooms and plants growing near a tree get water brought by the tree's roots. So how do mushrooms and trees help each other? So let's check for understanding, because I'm not sure if I exactly understand. Oh, look at that third paragraph. Mushrooms growing among the roots of a tree can help it get minerals. And the mushrooms and plants growing near a tree get water brought by the tree's roots. That was pretty easy to find the answer to my question. That would be a green question because we went straight to the text and it was right there. Bark is the skin of a tree. The outer layer of bark protects the tree. When an oak tree is young, the bark is as smooth as baby skin. As the tree grows older, the bark becomes rough and cracked. Looking at the bark of a tree can help you know what kind of tree it is. The cork used for bulletin boards is the peeled off outer bark of a cork oak tree. Honey locust bark has spines to help protect the tree. The bark you can touch and see is not growing anymore. Underneath it is a layer of growing bark called cambium. Each year's cambium growth is a ring in the wood of a tree. As trees add new cambium, the trees become bigger around. Next to the cambium are two layers called xylem and phloem. Water from the roots move through the xylem and sap from the leaves move through the phloem. Readers, do you remember our question from earlier in the text when we wondered how sap is moved through the tree? Let's reread the second paragraph on this page. I think we might have found the answer. Next to the cambium are two layers called xylem and phloem. Water from the roots moves through the xylem and sap from the leaves moves through the phloem. Did we find our answer? I think we did. And I love that this diagram is here because it really helps us understand what the text is saying. It puts a picture to the words. That always helps me understand even further. Phloem, cambium, and xylem are all labeled. So did we just answer a yellow question? Yeah, we did. We needed to read on a little bit before our question was answered. I'm now going to read the sidebar. In cool climates, cambium only grows in spring and summer. Count growth rings to see how old a tree was when it died. An old fir tree can have over 1,000 rings, one for each year it lived. In tropical rainforests, the cambium grows all year and there are no rings. It is hard to tell the ages of those trees. Trees grow bigger around and they grow taller. As a tree grows, lower branches may fall off, making the trunk look longer. But the branches do not move upward on the trunk. A tree grows taller only at the top, as the tips of the top branches grow upward. If you find a mark on a tree today, that mark would stay at the same height for as long as the tree lives. Look at the illustration today. I'm going to highlight those bubbles so that we can draw our attention to exactly what the text is saying. The text is saying that if you make a mark at 10 years, if you come back to that same tree at 20 years, it's going to be at the same exact height. And then 30 years, 50, and then 200 years. That's a pretty neat fact. Now I'm going to read the sidebar. Sequoias are some of the tallest trees in the world, over 300 feet tall. In the spring, you can smell tree flowers. Tree flowers are found in many shapes and colors and have many different smells. Parts of the flowers grow to become seeds. Oak trees have dangling clumps of flowers called catkins to help make acorns, the seeds of an oak tree. The sidebar says, birds, insects, and even bats are attracted to flowers to drink their sweet juices. When they brush the flowers, the animals get a powder called pollen on them. The animals carry the pollen to the other flowers. When the pollen mixes with certain parts of the flowers, seeds grow. Wind also helps pollinate flowers. An oak tree can drop more than 50,000 acorns in 1 year. Only a few of them grow into oak trees. Most are eaten, are crushed, rot, or land in a place where they cannot take root. Acorns can be carried away and dropped or buried by animals to grow in new places. Other kinds of seeds blow in the wind or float on water. Readers, how might an acorn end up many miles away from the tree it fell from? Let's go back to the text. Look at that second paragraph there. Let's reread and see if our answer is right there. Acorns can be carried away and dropped or buried by animals to grow in new places. Other kinds of seeds blow in the wind or float on water. That's a right there question, isn't it? That would be a green because we went straight back to the text to find the answer. The sidebar says that different kinds of trees make seeds with different coverings. Nuts, cones, and fruits all have seeds inside. Coconuts are seeds of a palm tree. A coconut can float across the ocean and sprout on a sandy beach. In cool climates, trees stop growing in autumn. The leaves of many trees stop making sugary food for the tree and they lose their green color. Then you can see the red, brown, yellow, and orange colors that are also in the leaves. Pine trees and some other trees have needles or leaves that do not change color in autumn. When leaves fall to the ground, insects and worms eat them. The chewed and eaten bits of leaves make the soil better for growing trees and other plants. Readers, in this sentence right here, then you can see the red, brown, yellow, and orange colors that are also in the leaves. Well, what does that mean? Why did the author put the word then there? Let's reread the sentence above that, maybe 2 sentences above that, and see if that helps us answer that question. I'm going to start at the top of the page. In cool climates, trees stop growing in autumn. The leaves of many trees stop making sugary food for the tree, and they lose their green color. Then you can see the red, brown, yellow, and orange colors that are also in the leaves. So the then tells us that the leaves turn different colors after they lose their green color. What kind of question do you think that is? We had to reread a little bit, so it could be a yellow, but it also was right there in the text, so it's probably a green. Nice job. Trees rest in the cold of winter, and their branches are bare. They may look as if they are dead, but look closely, and you can see small buds that will become leaves and flowers in the spring. In the spring, listen to the wind rustling the leaves. The trees are growing again. We sure did have a lot of questions as we read today. Our green questions were found right there in the text. It didn't take us long to answer how acorns could end up so far from the tree it fell from. However, the yellow questions took a bit of reading before we had a complete answer to how sap moves inside of a tree. We didn't discuss any red questions today during our text, but they're there. If you would like to extend your learning, you can think about and write about or discuss with someone what happens with the life cycle of pollen in the flowers. You could also think about what happens when the leaves fall from the trees and they fall to the base and the animals eat the rotten leaves, and it goes into the full life cycle there as well. Let's review our chart before we close today. Remember, we talked about 3 different types of questions. There's green, yellow, and red. And remember what we used to help us? What was that image? You're right, it was a stoplight. So green means go. Yellow means slow down, and red means stop. It's important while you're reading to stop and ask yourself questions.
especially if something doesn't make sense. It's also important to do that to make sure that you're fully comprehending. Maybe at the end of each page, you could stop and ask yourself a question when you're reading. You can practice that on your own time today. I've enjoyed doing some literacy learning with you today. Thank you for joining me as you keep learning from home. I look forward to seeing you again for our next lesson on KSPS.